Welcome to the Upshot, Multi-World Disc Golf's podcast about the latest in the disc golf world. I'm the publisher, Charlie Eisenhood. We got a brand new guest host this week, Josh Mansfield, who, it's not Juliana Korver. It's not Jay Yeti Redding. It's Josh Mansfield, and people are going to be going, who is Josh Mansfield? Well, I'm excited to answer that question right now. Josh, hello and welcome.
Thanks, Charlie. I'm thrilled to be here, especially given the pedigree of the hosts before me. It's an honor just to get to guest host with you.
You got you're kind of showing me up with the microphone too. This thing's looking serious.
It makes up for the lack of pedigree. So if they see the serious microphone, they think I know what I'm talking about.
Well, we all have to start somewhere with establishing a media presence. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your disc golf background, where you're from, and let people know what you're all about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm from Idaho, Montana. I currently live in Montana, but I just took a job. We'll be moving back down to Idaho. I started playing disc golf about 8 years ago with some buddies in high school. I think it's kind of the typical starting story of just you had some friends who had some discs in a backpack and invited you to come play. And I quickly fell in love with it. I play disc golf. I watch disc golf. I consume disc golf media. And the past 8 years, I've just been all in on disc golf. But it comes from, I think, a history of a sports family. Growing up, starting 2:00 Sunday afternoon, Sunday night or Sunday football was on and didn't get turned off again until, the end of the night on Sunday night football. So I follow all sorts of sports. And more than that, I'm interested in things like the way the UFC structures their media contracts, esports, and the way that they run teams, and the way that they do payouts for tournaments, traditional sports, and the way contracts and media and agents. And so it's not just watching sports, though I definitely have been accused of being an armchair analyst one too many times. But it's just the way that sports functions. And that's been a part of my school and my education. And so I'm just excited to be able to talk disc golf about that too, and the way that professional disc golf is evolving.
And I just want to note that you're a experienced speech and debate participant, not just in high school but also in college. What have you been up to lately with that? How's that whole thing going? And like, what do you do inside of speech and debate?
Yeah, great question. So my partner and I 2 weeks ago just took second at the Western Regional Championships.
Wow.
And that's one of our biggest tournaments of the year. And then we have nationals this coming weekend. So I talk on a lot of issues. I talk extemporaneously on a lot of them, and I learn to ask people really hard questions. So, I think it translates well to doing some interviews with people who don't want to answer them.
Hell yeah. That's what we like on this show. So this should be a lot of fun. We have a packed show today. Kristin Tattar will be joining us a little bit later to talk about what's going on over in Europe, what the plan is potentially for her to try to get over to the U.S. for, the World Championships and some of the big tournaments coming up in the next couple months. And we also have some tournaments to catch up on. Vintage Open, Silver Series event this past weekend, and Jonesboro coming up, Pro Tour event this coming weekend. And we got some great segments to go along the way. We're going to look at some of the top young MPO players and see, behind the hype, who's actually playing well right now, who's looking like they're the best on tour at this point here in 2021. So we'll do that a little bit later in the show. To get us started, though, I want to bring up a little bit of news. Simon Lizotte said on his social media channels that he is preparing to return to tour after a long rehab for his injured elbow. He's dealing with triceps tendinopathy, which unfortunately is not something that you can necessarily just heal. It may be something that he deals with for a long time, but he's now spent, 6 months basically doing rehab, physical therapy, training, starting to ramp back up into throwing, and says he's going to be returning to the tour at the OTB Open, which is in about a month. So he's going to play a couple of warm-up tournaments along the way and then head back out on tour. So, Josh, I assume you had a chance to watch him play against Paul McBeth at Paul's home course, which was posted on both his YouTube channel and McBeth's YouTube channel. And he set the course record, beat Paul pretty handily, to be honest, and really looked good. Do you think he's ready to come back out and be competitive on tour?
I do, Charlie. And I think one of the biggest things that is shown in that is I think Paul's course is something like a par 68. Like it's some obscene number. It's ridiculously long. And I know on the front nine, holes like 3 through 6 are like par 4, par 5, par 5, par 4, par 5. Including like a 1,200-foot par 5 that Paul said on the video he wants to take the title of most difficult hole in disc golf away from Northwood's Gold. Simon parred that with, and he's been saying he's not throwing full power, but he finished that front nine 4 under par with a lot of really long holes. And so I think the big question of, can he throw far? Can he still excel? I think he's proving that it may be a different Simon we're going to see, but I think he's ready.
Here's the thing that I think is very interesting, and Simon himself has acknowledged this. I talked to him this week for an article on the website, and he's on vacation in Lake Tahoe right now, and he told me, and this is a quote, "I can throw 450 feet with my DD3s without worrying about hurting my arm." So, just take a second and think about that. First of all, for those of us who can't throw 450 feet, it's hilarious. But also, how much distance do you really need to win on tour? I mean, I think it's fair to say that if that's, kind of his max out distance, that could put him at a disadvantage on some courses, and especially that'll think be potentially psychologically difficult for him, given that he's usually out throwing everyone. But as you can see with him playing on Paul's course, it's not like he is, way under the average in terms of distance if he's able to comfortably throw 450. And if he combines that with what will almost necessarily have to be more conservative, traditional line shapes, well, maybe Simon could actually play better with a more, throwing 80%. Is that a possibility?
I mean, I think it might be. Just watching him throw now, it looks so effortless. Like that's a compliment you always give pros is, wow, they make it look so easy. Simon made it look like Paul was working hard though to throw shots and it looked like Simon was just holding back. And so if he's doing that well, just playing that conservatively, I think that's going to do well for him. The big question mark I have though is, can he throw a sidearm? Because that's something even last year that he stopped and would set limits for himself and he wouldn't throw sidearms. I don't think you have to have much more than 450 consistent, easy distance to be competitive on tour. I think some courses, LVC, for example, he probably was going to struggle with not having a massive arm. Jonesboro, that's what we're going to talk about. Having a big arm there would have been an advantage. My bigger question, though, is I don't think you can really get by on tour anymore without a sidearm. And, that's why we always talk about James Conrad is such an anomaly that he can make it work without one. But I wonder, can Simon be successful if he cannot throw sidearms right now? And that I just don't know.
Yeah. And, James Conrad is for sure the exception that proves the rule. I think Simon, there's a reason that he played so bad at USDGC last year. And I don't think it was just tour fatigue and, arm injury. I think not having a forehand at that course, you can't make it work really, unless you're James Conrad and you somehow win without one. But yeah, no, it's true. The thing is, he's been working on throwing forehands. So is that going to potentially make it so that he's able to, if he can throw 300, 350, maybe that's enough to get by. It's going to be very interesting to see how it shakes out because, of course, the number one thing is you hope that he can get and stay healthy. Mm-hmm. And, he said that his doctor told him that it's not going to get better in the next couple of months compared to today. So that's why he's coming back out on tour. The doctor told him that he thinks it's going to be a part of his life for a while, maybe forever, simply that throwing hard is going to hurt his elbow. And, you think about how many reps he put on that arm, throwing and throwing and throwing, not only playing tournaments, but then turning around and doing, the YouTube videos or, showing off how far he can throw. And, I think it's going to end up being a cautionary tale to some extent for the future disc golfers who have Simon Lizotte level power. Simon can throw as hard as a baseball pitcher. He's throwing 90 miles an hour with a disc in his hand, and that puts a lot of pressure on your arm. And, Major League Baseball, they throw one session, and then they take 5 days off if you're a starting pitcher. And Simon's playing 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds where he's throwing these incredibly aggressive full power lines a lot. I think this may be a moment where we recognize, oh, wait a minute, you have to rest. This is not a sustainable thing to throw that much max power when you have the kind of ability to torque the disc like he does. If you're kind of a noodle arm, maybe it doesn't matter as much, but the physiology of your bones and tendons in this case, I mean, that may be something that, he's never able to fully recover from. And I think, hopefully he can stay out on tour, even if he can never get back to 100% of what he, once was. But I think that people are going to have to recognize, like, hey, disc golfers have to not only think about their training, but also about their recovery.
Absolutely. And I think especially when you think about baseball, those guys have physical therapists and doctors and training staff, and they go off the field and then they go to state-of-the-art facilities designed to help keep them healthy and have them ready again to throw. And disc golf just doesn't have that right now. And so I think it is going to have to be something that disc golfers are going to have to learn. What is my limit? How hard, if I'm going to go full as hard as I can throw, how many times in a round can you do that before you need to rest so you can do it again next weekend? And I think disc golfers are going to have to come up with that limit for themselves and learn to kind of work and create a game that is designed around that. And I wonder if that also is going to change course design, because our trend has been to getting and including more and more, like the preserve courses that just keep stretching the player's arm. So courses that we played before were too easy because now the average distance that these players can throw is now 550 instead of 450. And so I wonder if we're going to reach a limit where, okay, this is too far. Even though the players can reach it, it's time that we start going for ability, because otherwise we're going to start hurting our golfers. And that's not good for the tour. It's not good for tournaments. It's not good for the players.
It's a great point. I mean, there obviously is some sort of upper bound on this. And, there's a lot of ways to create difficulty that's not just raw distance. I think there's plenty of courses that prove that, and that don't necessarily sacrifice sight lines and televisability. Yeah. Which, of course, is something that people worry about with, heavily wooded courses, which create obviously lots of technical shots. But, it's worth noting, Simon's been working with, he lives in the Boston area. He's been working with professional sports medicine, people. So right. The doctors, the physical therapists, the trainers. He told me he's at the gym working out next to Major League Baseball pitchers. And what's unfortunate is that this is happening now at the point of having, him having an injury that requires this kind of intervention, as opposed to it happening, 5-10 years ago, when it could have been set up in more of a like, hey, here's how you're going to manage your arm over time. And, you think about what we've learned in baseball, to stay on this for a moment. Starting pitchers used to throw 120 pitches in a game. We see guys go 8-9 innings all the time. And the trend lately is guys getting pulled after 6 innings. And, the other day, a Giants pitcher went 8.2. I think it was Johnny Cueto. And I was like, literally don't remember the last time we had a starting pitcher go 8+ innings. Like, I don't think it happened ever in 2020 once.
I think you're right.
And so we have, obviously pitching is more max effort and there's more throws than a disc golfer is going to throw during a round, but it's still something to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And the other thing that I think has to kind of be a question of disc golf is, if you're a baseball pitcher, it's kind of expected that Tommy John surgery is a very real thing that you're probably going to have. If you are a starting baseball pitcher, I wonder if disc golf is going to say, this is an injury that's going to happen, and that happens in disc golf all the time. Maybe not Tommy John's to the same extent, but it's a question of what are players going to want to do? Is that something they're going to be okay with? At what point are they going to say, I'm earning enough money, I'm willing to do that? Because right now, payouts are low enough, and they've been getting better, obviously, but payouts, contracts, players, in order to be successful disc golf careers, need to be on tour for like 10 years, 15 years, however long. And so that the longevity of a career is something else they have to take into mind as well. And so I think it's going to be a balance of when are we going to start paying them enough that maybe they don't play as long. It's the expected career of a disc golfer isn't as long. Maybe we don't have the ageless wonder Johnny McCree out there still on the course. And that's something that all with health, I think, is going to be a big factor.
Very interesting. Let us know your thoughts. Upshot at ultiworld.com. And we'll see what Simon can do out there. I won't be surprised. He said he wants to get top 20 at OTB. I will not be shocked if that happens. It's just so much talent. I mean, you can see it. It just oozes out of every pore in his body. Vintage Open this past weekend. Arkansas on the road to Jonesboro. And it's a Silver Series event on the Disc Golf Pro Tour. Your winners this weekend, FPO Sarah Hokum gets an 8-stroke win over Jessica Weiss to take it home in FPO division. And over in MPO, Calvin Heimberg wins by 2 strokes over James Conrad, looking very sharp and continuing his very strong season. It's his first win of the year, but he has been all around the top 5 and that lead card pretty much at every event this season. So he finally gets his first win, and we'll be looking to back it up at Jonesboro after winning it last fall when the tournament got pushed to October in 2020. So, when you take a look at the results from Vintage, what stands out to you?
On the MPO side, James in second place. Because, and I know the article came out about the Manufacturers Cup that kind of looked at the results from all the players and based on how they're doing for their manufacturers. I don't think James is even the top MVP player before this one. I think it's Raven Newsom, who I know we'll talk about in the young guys section. But I think this James now is. It's good to see James back near the top because we haven't seen him anywhere near it all year long, if I'm not mistaken. So I think the big thing that stands out to me is that James is looking like James Conrad again.
I think here's what's a really good sign for James Conrad and fans of James Conrad. He led the tournament in strokes gained from tee to green. And I don't think you're ever going to question his putting. And switching your putter, like, sure, that's going to have a transitory effect on your putting skill, but once you dial in your new putter, you're going to be a great putter again. And he was one of the best this weekend. I think he was second behind Calvin in terms of putting strokes gained. But the fact that his tee to green performance was number 1 on the weekend tells you that he's starting to feel comfortable off the tee. And that was always where it was going to be tricky for James Conrad. And I think where it's proven to have been tricky so far. And I think you're starting to see him trend in the right direction. He was just outside the top 10 at Vegas. He was 8th at Texas State's. And this is his first time back up in that, top 5 range, obviously with the second place finish. So it was just a matter of time. Mm-hmm. I want to see how he does, at Jonesboro, where, the distance is going to get pushed a little bit more. But I think you're starting to see him look like James Conrad that we know him to be.
Yeah, I agree. And honestly, with Jonesboro, even with James, a hot James or James just off of the bag transition, Jonesboro isn't a tournament that I'm thinking James is. I'm like, wow, James is the guy who's going to win this tournament. It's not. He's not a distance guy. Before and after the bag change, that wasn't him. So it'll be interesting. I think if he does come up in the top 5, top 10, that trends really well for him. That shows that not only is he playing well, but his skills are diversifying. But I also, if something slides backwards a little bit in Jonesboro, I don't take that and say, oh man, Worlds, yeah, no chance. Like I think that course suits more towards this kind of technical that we've been seeing in the past couple of weeks that, like you said, he's been trending upward. So I think even though it may not be the perfect indicator, I think that it's a sign that James is settling down and it's good to see.
I also want to point out that Nico Lacastro continues to play extremely well. He finished 3rd this weekend. Remember, he skipped Vegas because of an injury when he punched the soda machine. And then he won Waco and was 16th at Texas State. Didn't play his best, but then looked really sharp again at Vintage. Hit another really long spin putt from like 65 feet into the wind. I mean, he's starting to develop a reputation for doing that on a regular basis at this point. And he's 4th in Pro Tour standings right now. So, I talked about this a bit last year. Nico was one of the best players that people weren't really talking about that much in 2020. Mm-hmm. He was just outside of the clear conversation for player of the year. And so far, he's playing at that same level. Like, we've seen Nico rise back to the level that we saw him at earlier in his career when he was winning, major titles on a regular basis. So I think Nico is going to continue to be somebody to keep an eye on lead cards.
I completely agree. And I think Waco's always been a weird tournament in my mind. The winners always, and who's in the playoffs with like Jeremy Colling back in the past couple of years. Waco's always had and produced weird showdowns in the final round. I want to see Nico win one of those premier events. I want to see him win DDO, or I want to see him win something that is one of those kind of hallmarks that you think of, the MVP Open at Maple Hill. I think if Nico wins one of those, it's going to be very difficult to push him out of that top player discussion of the year. And that's because he's already playing like it, barring some tragic collapse mid-season. I think if he keeps playing like this and wins kind of one of those title events, I think that's going to be big for him. He's playing amazing.
Shout out to Nathan Queen, who's not getting nearly enough love around the internet right now. He was 4th at Vintage. Since the distance fests of Vegas, and I guess he skipped the next one, but then at Waco, he was 38th. So kind of a bumpy start, but then he's gone 4th, 11th, 4th, his last 3 events, and is 11th on the national tour standings right now. Obviously, there's only been one event. And has just been really looking good. Like his shots have looked sharp. I think he's actually somebody to keep an eye on for, a course that sets up well for lefties / forehands. And I think, I wouldn't be shocked to see him land on the podium at some point this season.
I agree.
If we go over to FPO, Sarah Hokom wins by 8 strokes. Sarah Hogan's been a great player for so many years at this point, but we haven't seen her winning a lot of events in the last couple of years. Is this a signal about, she could have a big season? Is this, it's a Silver Series? Like, how do you see this win for Sarah Hokom?
I have a hard time giving too much to, and granted, I mean, that 8 strokes that's enormous. But I mean, Paige Pierce wasn't there either. She did beat the likes of like Katrina Allen, who took 3rd, and then Jessica Weiss in 2nd. So there were good players there. I feel though that Sarah Hokom, having such a specific game style, is either going to be, based on the course, top 3 discussion, or if she even cracks top 10, then is like, she's so specific in her style that it's hard to say that this is going to be the difference. I think I think she needs to win a real big event for us to start making that conversation about if this is going to be a year that Sarah Hokom starts challenging. But that's just how I see it in that area.
Yeah, it's interesting, played well at Waco. A little, like, for her 9th place at Texas State was sort of surprisingly poor, given her reputation for skill in the woods and how she's played at that event in the past. But, obviously a nice bounce back here. I mean, I had the hot round the last 2 rounds. I don't think you can take anything away from her. I mean, it's sort of weird with Sarah Hokom. Like, she's extremely consistent because of that game style that you're talking about. And I agree with what you're saying. Like, there's certain courses where you're like, there's just no way that Sarah Hokom's going to win this tournament. And that's not true for other players necessarily. But at the same time, I think other players sort of end up outperforming, shooting 10-10 rated rounds. And Sarah Hokom's just clipping away there at like 960, 970. And true. I think, it happened last year too, where, we weren't really talking about Sarah Hokom that much, but she was the second highest rated player in the world. and I think it's like when Paige is playing at her best, which we saw a lot of last year, it's just, it sucks the oxygen out of the room sometimes in FPO. But Sarah Hokom continuing to just be a legend and someone to maybe not learn your form from, but certainly learn course management and forehand approach.
Absolutely. And I think the one thing to note on that is, you talk about how players have those, I guess, flashes in the pan, and not to say they can't have them again, but Kona at Waco, just extraordinary how well she played, and then kind of defaults back to the mean. And a lot of players do that. The problem is I don't think there are very many weeks that you're not going to have somebody just have a breakout. And so, Sarah Hokom will probably be up there every time, but I really think that you're going to have players that Haley King with the win a couple weeks ago, Paige Pierce when she's dominant, Katrina Allen when she has a hot weekend. I don't know if Sarah Hokom's consistency is going to get a bunch of tournament wins like this one, but I hope she proves me wrong. I want to see her take a bunch of them down.
Let's see what happens.
It's fun to watch.
Yeah. Well, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to be joined by Kristin Tattar, who's going to talk with us about what's going on over in Europe and just, trying to deal with the COVID situation and not being able to compete in the United States for over a year. Stay with us. It's The Upshot. The Upshot is presented by Pound Disc Golf, makers of the finest bags in the sport. Set your calendar now, May 1st, 12 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. That's when they're opening up the custom programs again, and you can get the bag of your dreams, literally designed just the way you want it, every element of the bag customizable. So go check it out, pounddiscgolf.com. You can click around, you can make a bag, see what it's all about, and set your calendar again, May 1st, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 p.m. Pacific, and get ready to get your pound bag. Joining us now on the Upshot is the 2019 U.S. Women's Disc Golf Champion, Kristin Tattar. Kristin, hello. How are you?
I'm fine. I'm so happy to be here, and thanks for inviting me.
Thank you for joining us today. I don't think we've had you on the show before, so it's a great chance to catch up. And look, I know it's been a tough time for European disc golfers over the last 12 months. So I guess maybe a good place to start is, what's the situation in Estonia right now, and what has that meant for your disc golf for the last few months, and maybe even looking back to 2020?
The situation right now is pretty tough. We're basically in lockdown again, like in last spring. So the future is not looking very bright right now, but I guess we just have to deal with it, and there's no escape, and that's not up to me to change this situation. So I just have to cope with it. But pretty much all the events are getting canceled again, so I'm not getting my hopes high this year as well.
So I know that in the US during lockdown, things like outdoor activities like disc golf have been allowed to continue to participate. You can go and just play at a course. That's not something that's forbidden by those restrictions. Is that the case in Estonia as well? Can you go practice on your own on weekends at disc golf courses, or are they kind of blocking those off?
I can, yeah, but you can't go there with a big group. You just have to have one partner. That's allowed. So very fortunate that I can still practice, because I think last year some of the courses were closed. So yeah, I'm still training every day, and I'm still hoping I can come over to the US, but I'm not sure about anything right now.
Well, I just saw on Facebook that the PDGA Euro Tour folks are trying to set up a second tournament in Croatia, which will be right before the Pro Forester tournament, which hopefully will be the kickoff of the Euro Tour after the other events to start the season have either been canceled or postponed. And what I saw in the post about this is that there's a potential, because Croatia is not a part of the Schengen area, that players could go there, spend 14 days there, and then be able to fly to the United States from Croatia in order to get in for Worlds. Is that something that you're thinking about trying to do as a potential avenue to come over and compete?
Yes, definitely. So I've been looking ways to come over for, I don't know, several months now. And this is something that I've been thinking about and might use, but we're also been thinking maybe we do it even earlier. We've been talking to Albertam and my boyfriend Silverlet, that maybe in early May we maybe travel to, I don't know, Mexico or somewhere and spend the 14 days there and then come over and so we can be part of more events, because I think it would be weird to just fly over there for Worlds and then you don't really get the chance to like practice there or anything. So maybe we come over earlier even.
Are you thinking about trying to make it for U.S. Women's in May?
I think I can't make it. I think it's I don't have enough time, I think. But I would have loved to. I mean, I'm super sad because these were the two events, the U.S. Women's and the Worlds, that I was aiming for, and but I don't think I can make it to U.S. Women's.
So you mentioned trying to come over earlier and getting in like the practice for Worlds. Would you plan on staying for longer during the summer and doing even like a partial tour where you play Worlds and then stay through the end of July, for example? Do you have a timeline of how long you would want to stay in the United States to play?
We'll have to see. I mean, first of all, we have to spend 2 weeks out of Schengen area, and then I think 1 week quarantine in the US. That's my information. I'm not too sure, but so 3 weeks, like not doing anything and then getting into the country. So I think it would be worthwhile to spend more time there since it's so hard to get there. So maybe prior to the World, some events, and maybe afterwards as well. But I know that the European stretch is also coming after the World. So I have mixed feelings about it. So we'll have to see what's the situation in Europe and what will happen. Can't make any like big plans right now. That's what I feel like.
Has it been difficult to, now for like well over a year and a half, not to be able to come and compete with the other, the top American and North American women? Does it, do you feel like it's affecting your game in any way, not to have the kind of higher level of competition? Or do you feel like you get that enough in Europe with obviously some of the other best in the world?
It's hard to say because we don't have events right now. And so even I can't even compete with the best of the women in Europe. So I think Evelina and Henna, they're definitely like some of the world's best women. And it's always fun to compete with them. And last year I got to do a few competitions in Finland. So I'm happy because of that. But I do feel I need to like compete more and I want to compete more. So I used to watch all the live broadcasts of the competitions in the US, but now I can't watch them because I'm so jealous.
Oh no.
Yeah. I feel like I want to be there and I should be there, but I can't be there and it's not up to me to make it happen. But maybe if we do the 3 week stretch, like not doing anything and spending like quarantining, and maybe we can get there. So we'll try at least.
So in terms of your training every day then, because you're not having nearly as many competitions, what are you doing instead to train. And with that, do you work a full-time job as well and train on the side, or are you focused primarily on disc golf? What does this off-season quote unquote routine look like for you?
So I was working full-time job up to like 2018, I think. 2019, I quit and just focused fully on disc golf. And I had like a very big breakthrough in 2019. So I thought, oh my God, this can be my career, and this is everything I dreamed about. So I was very prepared for 2020, and then COVID-19 came. But I did get a very good contract with Latitude 64 for 3 years. So I'm lucky enough that I don't have to work a full-time job. I can just focus on training, but just the hard part is that I can't really show my skills or take part at the competitions like I want to.
Yeah, absolutely. And then for that training, then do you does it start with field work in the morning and then you're at the course and you play several rounds, or what kind of does a training routine look like for you when you just have full-time training?
Well, usually in the mornings I do like training that's tougher. So like go running and like strength training. And in the evening, I usually do like field work or just play around. Depends on how like tired I am or how I'm feeling, because in disc golf, we don't really have like trainers, like professional trainers like coaches who tell you what to do.
Right.
And I've done other sports before and it was super easy. You were told what to do. You didn't have to think. You just acted how they told you should act and what to do and when to sleep and what to eat and so on. So I feel I could be a very good student, but I don't have the teacher. So I have to be my own teacher, and I'm trying my best I can. So just taking the knowledge that I have from other sports and just trying to make it work. But yeah, harder trainings in the morning and then easier stuff in the evening.
I see that you just played your first tournament of the year, a C tier there in Estonia. You won easily, which doesn't come as a big surprise, but I'm just, was it nice to get back out and be able to play in a tournament?
Yeah, sure. It was, but it was very icy and snowy and very tough conditions. So really not appropriate for a PDGA event, but this was all I could do. So, I competed, and yeah, it was fun. And it was nice to get that competitive mode on, and I really liked it. But after that event, everything went into lockdown, and no events are allowed to organize right now. So I don't know when the next event will come up in Estonia.
So, if you can make it over 4 worlds, do you think it's a disadvantage for you and other European players to have basically had to kind of miss a full year of the big competitive majors, compared to US players who obviously have, it was a limited season last year, but it was still a full touring season for the most part with a major.
Yes.
How much of a disadvantage do you see that as being, or is it still just go out and play your game?
I try not to think about it. I think I just try to focus on the positive things, and if I can make it there, I'm just happy about it. And yeah, just try not to think about the negative stuff, because, well, on one hand, I think it is some sort of disadvantage, but on the other hand, I don't know, maybe it's good we got to take time off. I don't know. We'll see. So yeah, I try not to think about it. I'll just be happy to be able to compete.
Have you ever played in Utah before at the course where they're going to have Worlds?
No, never.
No. Okay.
Should be fun. It's a beautiful state.
It's a nice
high
course.
Altitude.
Yes. They've told me that the discs aren't quite like it, like down here.
Right. You mentioned Latitude 64 and your sponsorship. Have there been adjustments made to anything because you've kind of been unable to compete a ton? And have there been questions about, more requests to do things on Instagram or on social media since you're not out at events, getting on coverage?
I wouldn't say that they're pressuring me to do stuff. They're very supportive and they understand the situation. They're all Europeans, so they know what's going on. And well, obviously they would like to see me competing and doing stuff on social media. And I try to be active on social media, but yeah, they're not pressuring me to do anything. Basically, they're very supportive and just trying to get through the tough times.
Yeah. For our largely American audience, I think it'd be very interesting. Could you tell us a little bit about what does the current lockdown look like? I mean, are we talking about you're not allowed to go outside of your house level of strictness, or, are things sort of open? What does it look like in Estonia?
In Estonia, it's not super bad because, I mean, there's only 1.2 million of us. So there's not many people here. And there's enough land for everybody. So everyone can move outside, but just not in big groups. All the shops are closed and you can't go out to eat or anything. So yeah, basically all you can do is go outside and play disc golf. But I know some other countries like France, you can't go out after 6 p.m. and you can't go to the beach or anything. So there are some stricter rules in other parts of Europe. But in Estonia, I'd say it's not too bad.
One question I should have asked earlier when we were talking about, playing rounds and practice rounds and stuff. How far is the closest course to your house?
The closest, I'd say 4-minute car ride.
Oh, okay. So it's right there. You can go anytime you want and practice then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I dream of that. The closest course to my house is 40 minutes away. The perils of living in New York City.
I feel for you.
Me too. So, when you look at 2021, how are you going to define success for yourself this year, given everything that's going on?
Success for me would be to take part of Worlds, I'd say. That's something I've been just dreaming about the whole 2020 season. I was just thinking about going to the Worlds, and I don't care if it's the only competition, but I would really be a part of it, would want to be a part of it. And to me, it's a little weird that the Worlds is definitely taking place, and we're not sure if the world can be a part of it. So yeah, that's the thought that's been motivating me to go to practice and stuff. And yeah, I really want to be there.
Sure. And I think everybody would love to see you and the other European players there. Maybe should have asked this already, but last year the PDGA came out and they canceled Worlds, and they said kind of the primary reason for canceling is that, international players, particularly the Europeans, wouldn't be able to come. Yes. And this year they said they're having it, which, given this current situation, feels a little bit contradictory to what they said in 2020. So do you think that Worlds shouldn't happen if the Europeans can't make it over without having to jump through the kind of hoops you're describing?
I would say yes, Worlds can't take place if the world can't be there. Then they should name it something else. It's not World Championships. In any other sport, you can't have World Championships without multiple countries representing themselves. So, yeah, to me, it's a little weird. But
I think
maybe
especially
we can't get there, so let's not get that sad. But yeah, we're trying to make it over there.
And I think especially on the FPO side, with you and the other European women, I think there's a legitimate question of, would the result have been different if the European players are there or not? And so I think that's, I see where that sentiment comes from,
Asterisk.
Yeah, it's an asterisk on the winner that was not a Worlds, because the three people specifically in my head who could have won that tournament weren't there. I guess for you personally, though, let's say you make it over to Worlds, and I know you said you're not focusing in on the negative and that you would just be thrilled to be there. But do you think that if you showed up at Worlds, you got a couple rounds of practice and a couple weeks of practice in, could you win Worlds?
Well, I think it's every player's goal, and I can't say otherwise. It's my goal too to win World Championships, and I'm not very open about speaking about my dreams and stuff, but I think I would say I'd like to win a world title in my career.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. If you do decide to go to Mexico for 2 weeks, it's a great country to visit for 2 weeks. I mean, really, you can go anywhere and it's great. Mexico City's amazing. You could go to the beaches in the Yucatan Peninsula. It's a legitimately vacation and would be quite pleasant before you come over to the U.S. So we hope you can make it. Keep us posted, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Kristin Tattar with us here on The Upshot. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. Shop for your discs at discgolfamerica.com. It's a veteran-owned company that's got a clean and easy-to-use website. You get 5% back in rewards. There's a picture and a weight for every disc. And it's just $3.95 flat rate shipping with free shipping for orders over $39. And you know what? You can save 10% extra with code UPSHOT. They do a great job. I ordered some discs from them. They put every disc in its own bag, got here in 2 days, exactly as pictured, and weights exactly right. So love what they do, discgolfamerica.com. Welcome back to The Upshot. Thanks again to Kristin for joining us and speaking candidly about the frustration that surely she's feeling given the situation in Europe and the COVID situation. I mean, just to be clear, in case this didn't come through obviously enough in the interview, there's still a ban on European Schengen area countries traveling to the United States. So the options are basically spend 2 weeks out of the country, outside of the Schengen area, come to the U.S. and then quarantine, or basically you can't come. There's carve-outs available, but no disc golfer has been able to get approved for a professional sports exemption that they made for, Major League Baseball and the NFL and stuff. So it's possible that this guidance is going to get updated in about a week. I would be a little surprised given the current COVID situation in Europe, which is not good, if they relaxed the ban at this point. So just to give some context there. So obviously it's exciting, good news that she's trying to find a way to come over. And I would say it sounds fairly optimistic that it's going to happen and that she's going to make it over for Worlds.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's super exciting, because I know the Worlds had announced on their social media that they were going to hold spots for the European players. And when I first saw it, I thought, oh, that must just be a formality. But based on, the way Kristin talked about it, it seems that she might be able to be there at Worlds, which I think is essential for a Worlds tournament personally. Yeah.
And you heard what she said about the PDGA shouldn't be holding the tournament if international players can't be there. What do you think about that?
I think that on the MPO side, I think most disc golfers who pick their top 5 to win Worlds right now, it is early, but if you were to pick your top 5 to win Worlds, all 5 of those people are American players. They're going to be at Worlds regardless of these COVID restrictions. And so on the MPO side, we don't really think much about it. I think that as soon as you say that the European players get to come for Worlds, in the FPO side, you have to take a hard look and realign your top 5. And at that point, I think I agree with Kristin. Like, we asked her if she thought she could win it, and she didn't outright say it. But I think she knows that she stands a chance, that she's a competitive player, that she could give that tournament a run for its money. And so I think that, if she wasn't there, if none of the European women are there, it just doesn't feel like a World's Championship.
And it's there's no way around it. Like what the PDGA said a year ago is kind of 100% 180 from what they're saying now, which is that, we have to move on and hold this event. And that's just been the approach that's been taken. It's hard. There's no question. You can't really call it a world championship for real, like really commit to saying it and believe it when you only have North American players there. And I think it's not even just about like who can win. I think there's also an element of like, are the top world players there? Mm-hmm. Like are the top Japanese players there? Are the top, obviously across Europe, like the folks who want to come from Australia, like if they don't even have the option really to come without having to do, significant hoop jumping, does it count as a world championship in that sense? I mean, to me, this is just like has to be a wake up call for what this tournament is all about. And, we can't just have the world championships in the United States every year and just pretend as though, it doesn't matter like what the rest of the world is doing, because that's not what a world championship is. Mm-hmm. I was talking to Matej Vero, who's the director of the Euro Tour, because they've been having some troubles getting their events going because of COVID. And he pointed out to me that the European players make up about 10% of PDGA members, which, I mean, that's pretty hot. Like that's a lot of.
It's a ton. Yeah,
that's a lot of people, more than I would have guessed off the top of my head. And I think that shows me that like Worlds needs to become truly a world event. And that's going to make it inconvenient for American players sometimes. And I just think that's kind of too bad. Like, put it in the US every other year. But I think at least it needs to go to Europe soon.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, even if you rotated out to Canada, and so you did Europe every third year, I think that's completely fine. I think the message that this sends, though, and we talked to Kristin a little bit about afterwards about, do you know of any other European players who are going? And she really didn't. I mean, it's really her and a couple others, and that was really about it. I think that when you kind of send the signal that Worlds is in the United States, that the Pro Tour is a US tour, and that it happens in the United States, that when you're a young, aspiring, and great disc golfer from Europe, making the decision to be a full-time disc golfer is incredibly difficult, because the PDGA and the Disc Golf Pro Tour has shown that our priority is for the American players, for the American tournaments. And so at that point, maybe you have some really, we know that we have amazing European and Japanese players, and maybe Malaysian players or Australian players that all see that and say, I probably could be a professional disc golfer, and choose not to, because of the signals and the way that we structure the tour has been explicitly around not including them nearly as much as we should.
And some of this is logistical. I don't want to I don't want to kill the PDGA too much for this. I mean, they're expanding the Euro Tour and trying to make that have more media coverage. The Pro Tour is going to have a European event this year, PCS Sula Open. So these doors are starting to open a little bit, and I think people recognize the amount of growth that's happening in particularly in places like Finland and Estonia. But in a way, it's true. There's kind of, because of the difficulty of just simply touring, if you want to be a touring professional player, you have to live in the United States for 9 months of the year. And we've not even seen players like Kristin Tattar go and play a full US tour because it's too far from home, too expensive, whatever the reason may be. There's a lot of kind of barriers there because the prize money just isn't enough yet to make it work. And that's a logistical situation. We're actually going to talk a little bit about prize money and purse in a moment,
right?
Because I think we are in the midst of what could be a seismic shift. And in our subscriber bonus segment this week, we're going to talk about this in much greater detail about spectators and what's the future of spectating and what is that going to mean for the economics of disc golf tournaments? Because I think we're going to see things change suddenly in the next year or two, like that fast. So we will get to that. Let's take a look here. We've got the Jonesboro Open coming up. Mm-hmm. Speaking of spectators, this tournament is going to have them. We are going to see, I know they sold out of their $75 VIP tickets. They had 100 of them. They sold out of those pretty quickly. And I think they're still selling day tickets. There's, I think, 500 available per day. And so this is going to be the first event on the Pro Tour that has like legitimate spectators at the event. Phase 2 event, not phase 1. And I was talking to Jeff Spring, tour director, earlier this week, and it sounds like the plan is for events going forward to be in phase 2, at least through all of the events in California. So we'll see what that holds for the Portland Open. We know that Worlds is going to have spectators as well. They've been selling tickets $50 a pop, and they've sold over 500 of those. So Jonesboro going to have spectators. And it's a really exciting course and event that seems to get more interesting every year. One of the things I love about Jonesboro, and somebody brought this up in our Ulti World Disc Golf Discord, is that you have like rough. It like looks like a golf course, but like is built to be disc golf first. And so you have a fairway that's very visibly clear, and then you have rough, which like literally is like tall grass. And that's actually something that I'd love to see explored even further in the future, but a very cool event. What do you look forward to about this one?
I think for me, I remember that it's so long, it's a very distance oriented course. But with that rough that you were talking about, on a lot of long courses, you can throw as hard as you want, and if you miss your line, it's not that big of a deal. It's whatever. You have a 200-foot upshot, but it's still wide open, right? So you can miss 200 feet to the right, and as long as there's no OB, you're fine then. I think what I like about Jonesboro is that if you mess up your shot, you're in rough that can turn a birdie look into a bogey look pretty quick. And it's fun to watch. It's an exciting tournament to watch, I think, and so I'm looking forward to seeing it.
So I think the thing when people think about Jonesboro that they think about, and appropriately so, is Paige Pierce, who has won this event 4 years in a row. Last year, she won it by 13 strokes over Katrina Allen, beat Katrina by a stroke in 2019, won by 10 strokes over Jennifer Allen in 2018, and won by 2 strokes over Sarah Hokum in 2017. This feels like a Paige Pierce get right tournament. Does it not?
I agree. She played great at Memorial. She played great at Vegas. And then since we've been in Texas, I don't think Paige has even like contested for the win. I know she hasn't won, but I don't know if she really just has had a rough stretch through the Texas swing. And that's something that people have always pointed out. I think she dropped 17 rating points in this most recent update. 19 rating points in this previous update, which is, that's enormous. It definitely puts a damper on the road to the road to 1,000, I guess, conversation for her right now. Well,
we talked about it on the show, heading into these Texas tournaments, she was right there and, sitting at 998. And it was like, she's going to have to play great disc golf over these next couple rounds because she was going to lose some events that she played out really well last year, those big distance bomber courses in 2020,
Yeah.
Vegas, Memorial, etc. And those dropped off. She's put together some, by her standards, subpar rounds, and it adds up to a 19-point drop, which, I think the real question is, like, was the 998 ever, was that really real? I think there were some advantages to having such a limited schedule in 2020. Is 977 really real? No, I think it's too low. And I think it's just sort of a similar thing, like the way the math lines up for the number of rounds included. But yeah, there's no question, like, getting back up to 1,000 is now going to take some work, because
Absolutely.
these rounds from the last 3 weeks aren't going anywhere anytime soon. So you have to deal with those being in your average.
So
that said, Jonesboro, a place where we would expect her to, if not outright comfortably win, still be in clear contention given her distance, just outperformance compared to the field.
Agreed. And that's actually what I wanted to ask you is if Paige Pierce comes out this weekend and loses, and I don't mean like get beat, right? Like where Katrina beats her in one stroke because on the 18th hole on the final round. But if Paige Pierce loses by 10 strokes, 5 strokes, do you think it's time for her to start sounding the alarm bells? Is something wrong?
I think yes. I'm not sounding those alarm bells right now.
I'm not either.
But I think that if, she were to really look off her game this weekend and, not really contend for a win, that would be a alarming sign for where her game is. And here's the thing, seeing her go through these little ups and downs, kind of roller coastery, obviously more ups than downs, and downs for her means finishing in 5th as opposed to finishing in 1st. But, every year she seems to have like a rough patch here and there. And the thing is, this course just sets up really well. There's a reason she's won in 4 years in a row. It's because, she's able to leverage the best part of her game and the best, sort of comparative advantage that she has over other players in the field. So if she's looking off, then I think you have to say, is she ready to go win Worlds? I think that will be a question that will pop up if she doesn't look sharp this weekend.
I agree. And not to delve too far into Worlds, because I know we're still a ways out, but the Fort in Utah is a pretty wooded course. Like it's a technical course. I've played it before. I don't live too far. I mean, I live a couple hours from it, so I've gotten to play it. I've played that golf course, and it's a good combination of both of them. And I think Paige is going to have to, if not dominate in the woods, at least do damage control on the open golf course. And so if she doesn't this weekend, I think we have to start talking and asking questions about it.
Yeah. Well, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Calvin Heimberg won this event in 2020, but it's been a little bit more mixed at the top of the leaderboard. Although you tend to see the big throwers, the big arms up at the top. Garrett Gerthy has been excellent at this event historically, but hasn't won it. Always going to be a threat to do so. And I think when we get to our picks in just a moment, I think you'll see that, big distance is going to be the name of the game, and that, you're going to see those top rated guys up in our picks because of the nature of this tournament. And, Calvin Heimberg coming off the win, you got to think that he's going to have a really good shot this weekend to back up his win from 2020.
I agree. And I don't think Calvin's missed top 5 all year. So not just last weekend, not just this tournament, Calvin looks phenomenal right now. And so
locked in. Well, let's get to him. Let's get to our picks. I'll let you go first. You can pick the division and let's go through them.
Okay, we'll start with FPO then. Given everything we just said about Paige, I still have Paige at my number 1. I think that this course, I think that slump that you talked about, it's something that Paige gets through, and I think this is the tournament that she does it. So I definitely have Paige in my number 1, but I do have Katrina Allen in my number 2, and I think that it's going to be close. And I just think that Katrina's got the distance that is Paige's biggest advantage. And so if anybody's gonna keep up, I really think it'll be Katrina Allen.
Yeah, no doubt about that. I mean, I don't think we're going to see Katrina lose by 13 strokes like last year. Katrina's been playing very good. So
I agree.
Yeah. Okay. Who you got after that?
Then I've got Haley King. I think she looked really good. I believe it was Texas State that she won. It is wooded, but she's playing well. And I know we've seen her have the arm before. I think she does have decent distance, enough to keep up on the course. And given that she's coming off a big win a couple weeks ago, I like Haley King next. For my number 4, I've got Kona Panis. I think she looked good earlier in the year. Slowed down a little bit, but she also is one that I think can really show up here. And then my last one is Sarah Hokum, who I think, like we talked about, super consistent, a solid lock, because she's always a safe top 5 pick, and I think that she'll be able to do well here.
I also have Paige at the top, so I'll get that out of the way just in a hurry. Yeah, I mean, 4 years in a row. Look, it's this is a chance for Paige to prove any doubters wrong right now. I have Haley King in second this year. I really liked what we saw from Haley King at Texas State. She looks like she's rounded into form at this point. And, after kind of like looking a little rough around the edges to start the year, starting to get it all dialed in. She said on Instagram that she feels like her timing is really good right now, and hard to argue with that, the way she was hitting lines at Texas State. So the combination of, current form and her ability to put it out there on a long course like this adds up to a second place for my pick. Katrina Allen in third. Won't be surprised if she wins it, to be perfectly honest, but I just think Paige and Haley are going to be ahead of her this weekend. Valerie Monduhano in fourth. Just think her game is she's kind of becoming a standard top 5 pick for me. And I have Kona Panis in 5th place. She can bomb it, and obviously has been playing well so far this season. MPO, here we go. I'll take it off first. I'm going to go with the Calvin repeat. I feel like I'm doing this a lot this year, where I'm picking players who just won a tournament to then win the next tournament. I think it's working out okay so far, but at some point I will deviate from this. But yeah, I just think the distance advantage here is going to be really helpful for Calvin, and it's not just about this one weekend. Like, he's been super, super good all season. Yeah. I have Paul Macbeth in 2nd place. Paul in the top 3, clockwork. Ricky Wysocki in 3rd, similar to Katrina. I won't be shocked if he wins. Garrett Gurthie in 4th, which it would be a great story if he were to win. Love the way he's played this course in the past. And this is risky, but I'm going to put Eagle in 5th place. I don't really know where he's at, like injury wise right now, how he's feeling. But I do think that, from what we saw of him back at Vegas and on the open courses, this, similarly to Paige, gets him back out in sort of into his comfort zone. And so as long as he's feeling good, he's taken a couple weeks off. Assuming he's feeling good, I think he's going to play well this weekend. So I've got Eagle in 5th.
I think it's a good pick. I know that, spoiler, I don't have Eagle in my top 5. And I know after I saw you put Eagle in, I definitely was a little bit nervous. I was like, man, maybe I've made a mistake here. I guess we're going to see. I also have Calvin for my win. I think he's just been looking incredible this year. And like you, I think the repeat, and I think it's funny. You noted that, you've been picking people to win back to back. Last year when Eagle won, and granted for Ricky, it was, Silver Series and then the Pro Tour event. And same thing with Calvin, this would be a Silver Series followed by a Pro Tour event. But last year when Eagle won back to back Pro Tours, we're like, oh my goodness, like what, Eagle is just killing it right now. And now we're kind of like, yeah, back to backs feels right. Like they're just playing so well right now. And Calvin is just, I think, on fire. I don't know if my first week on the Upshot was the best time to make a hot take. But here comes my hot take.
It's always a good time for a hot take.
I hope I make Jamie proud. My second pick, I've got Garrett. Garrett has not missed the podium since 2017. He's been in top 3. His distance has been great. And I know that his game this year has been looking really good as well. I think he's been finishing pretty consistently high. And in this tournament, he may win it. It would be an awesome story, like you said. I don't have him beating Calvin. I think Calvin's putting is significantly better than Garrett's. And so I think that's going to be hard for him to overcome. But I think Garrett's distance is enough to get him up into second. My third pick, I've got Ricky. Which the same spot as you. Ricky just looks so good right now. And his distance putting too, even if Ricky isn't as close, if his drives aren't as clean at all times, his distance putting just looks so good from circle 2. And so that makes up for it. That kind of is something that can cover anything else.
Big advantage of Jonesboro.
Mm-hmm, it really can. The hot take here, I've got Paul in 4th, which yes is outside of a podium finish. And it's nothing against Paul. It's no knock on Paul. I just feel like Calvin's just absolute dominance right now. Just how well he's playing consistently week in and week out. Garrett's distance, Ricky's putting means that Paul just slips down into 4th, and I might get proven really, really wrong if he wins by 10 this weekend. But that's where I'm sticking him. And then I've got Nico in 5th. I think Nico's spin putts, his throw-ins from 80 feet, he also has good distance. He's got a good forehand that he's been working on. I feel solid with Nico. He's been playing well. So
here's the issue with Paul, and we saw it on the video with Simon Lizotte, and we see it in the stats. The putting is just not sharp right now. He's 38th right now in C1X putting on tour, which that's not terrible, but for a player of his caliber with his level of ability on the green is not sharp enough. 82%. And he's been great from circle 2, 37% from circle 2 so far this season, which is 8th on tour. But that C1X putting, and it's been a little bit of an issue. It's been a little bit of an issue, and he's only finished outside the top 5 once this season. He was 9th at Vegas, and then went 5th, 2nd, 3rd the last 3 events. I just think that, for him to win, and for any of these guys to win, they have to play well in all facets of the game. Mm-hmm. And so the putting has to improve. I know it's been a point of emphasis for him this past off season, and it just hasn't quite got there yet. So we'll see. When Paul finds the rhythm with the putter, he's almost unbeatable. So that's going to be an interesting thing. But I don't think it's crazy to put him in 4th, is I guess what I'm saying. All right, so there's our Jonesboro picks. You can make your own, of course. Send them to us, upshot@ultiworld.com. You never know. If you make perfect picks, you're gonna win. You're gonna win something. We just give stuff away when people do that. Now we're going to turn our attention to something a little bit different. We were talking in our production meeting before this week's show about some of the younger players on tour, the newer players on tour, who have been impressive to start the season. And we thought it might be good to take a second and look at where these players stand right now, what they've been doing so far on tour, what their ratings look like after this latest update, and make some comparisons. Who are the big names that are coming up in the sport? So we put 6 names down on paper. I'm sure we could go deeper than this if we wanted to, but these are the 6 names that we put down: Ezra Aderhold, Kyle Klein, Gavin Rathbun, Raven Newsom, Casey White, and Mason Ford. They've all been on tour, or they've all turned professional, I should say, within the last 5 years. And many of them are basically new to tour within the last 2 years, certainly full-time touring. Now, before we go further, Josh, without checking, which of these players do you think has the highest rating and the lowest rating of the group?
So I'm going to go with probably the highest rating first. Okay. And I think of my highest rating. I'd probably pick Ezra. I feel like his second place at Las Vegas, he looked phenomenal. Ezra's been playing well. Ezra, he feels like, in terms of rating, I would have thought that I would think that Ezra is the highest rated player. For my lowest rated player, I'd probably pick Casey White. I think he's probably the newest to the tour. I know that he turned pro more recently. He's one of the newest to the tour. He just got that big contract with Discmania, excuse me. But his rise to fame wasn't a stellar performance. It was his vlogs with Simon. And though he has been playing well recently, I think that Casey would probably be my guess for the lowest rated.
Well, you're almost right with Casey. He's 1019 rated after the latest update. Moving up. That's tied with Raven Newsom. They're tied for the second lowest of the bunch. But the lowest of the bunch, Ezra Aderholt. Yes. If you can believe it. He's 1018 rated after this latest update. He dropped a bit. Certainly he started the year well, but has not played especially well the last couple of weeks. And of this group has the lowest average finish so far this year, actually, 40th, which, given how he played to start the year, is surprising, but it's been a little bit of a bumpy road. The highest rated player, it's a tie. One of them I think is maybe unsurprising, Kyle Klein, rated 1029. The other, Mason Ford, someone who maybe isn't getting talked about enough. And you pulled the stats for Mason Ford. What did you find when you looked up his stats?
So I have been following Mason Ford a little bit and just kind of been keeping an eye on him, which is why we kind of added him as the sixth guy. Because Mason Ford made the lead card, I think, at Texas State for round 2. But if you look at his stats, in terms of circle 1 in regulation, circle 2 in regulation, fairway hits and birdies, birdie percentage, he's the highest rated out of our group in all 4 of those categories. And he's not the worst in any other category either. It's pretty up and down for the other players, whether they have, if they're the best or worst, but Mason Ford is super consistent. He has the lowest best finish. So the best he's placed this year is 19th, which is he's the only player not to have a top 10 finish this year. So he doesn't have one of the highest finishes, but in terms of the lowest finish, only Raven Newsom beats him out. He's gotten 38th, which is his worst finish for Mason Ford. So his range of where he's finishing is incredibly low, but statistically he looks great. He's playing really well.
Yeah, there's no question about it. 44% reaching circle 1, 66% reaching circle 2. Those are top 50 numbers on tour. And as you said, the best of the bunch. Raven Newsom really impressive to me. Like when I actually sit down and look at the stats, his average finish this season is 18th. His best is 9th. His worst is 26th. He's been a little bit weaker in reaching circle 1 and circle 2 in regulation, perhaps a sign of maybe distance not being his strongest suit, but he's also hitting 37% of his circle 2 putts. So if you're getting it close-ish, and he's still over 60% reaching circle 2, and then you're hitting the putt, well, you're getting the birdies.
Yeah,
so,
and he's 9th on tour in circle 2 putting.
Yeah, it's an excellent number. Now, of course, we should just caveat everything, like it's still early in the season, law of large numbers, like we need some time for things to converge to kind of the true abilities, but we actually did some statistical research on this. It doesn't take that many events to start to show the skill that a player has. It's obviously more than like 1 or 2 rounds, but it's not 100 rounds. Like you converge pretty quickly. So I think these numbers are pretty reliable, all things considered. Casey White stands out for his putting, 87% inside circle 1. That's 15th on tour. Easily the best of the bunch. Go ahead.
What one thing with that, when we just talked about Paul's 18th. Casey is putting better than Paul McBeth is right now. And granted, Paul's been struggling, but if you're hitting your circle 1 putts that often, that's phenomenal. That is a lot of strokes that he is taking on the field. So
yeah, I look at 90% as like the elite number. Maybe it should be a little bit lower, but 87% is extremely good. That's world class.
Yeah.
And, Casey White has a 6th place finish this year. One of the best, Gavin Rathbun has been playing well. I think that here's the thing. There's a lot of bias towards thinking about the players who are playing well because you've seen them on coverage. Whether you watch post-production or live, like when people make lead cards and then you watch them play, like your brain says this player must be having a great season, which is true to an extent. Obviously, getting onto the lead card of the tournament is an impressive thing to do. But I think that's why you kind of got to sit back and look at like, how are people actually finishing when you zoom out? Ezra Aderhold, easily the buzziest name of this whole group, and he's got the worst average finish. I think it shows you the limitations in his game outside of big open Heiser bomb courses. And, he's got a 76th place finish so far this season, alongside a 2nd place finish. That's a very large range. So I actually think it's not totally obvious to me who's having the best season so far. Raven Newsom has the highest average finish. Kyle Klein is just behind him at 20th and is tied for the highest rating of this group. Like, if you had to pick one of these players, who would you pick? Best year so far.
Best year so far. Honestly, and I mean, it's kind of crazy to think about. I never would have thought this until we pulled the numbers. I think Casey White's got the best year so far. He has a top 10 finish. I have a hard time picking Mason Ford because even though he's consistent, even though he's great, even though he's one of the highest rated, I think you need, the finish, a good finish as well to really classify you as a top player. Casey White's got good finishes. He plays well when he's on coverage. His stats are looking good. I think Casey and with these stats in front of me, it's kind of funny looking at the average finish and picking the guy in third. But I think, and especially given the expectations of Casey White coming in compared to someone like Ezra, I like Casey White. I think he's doing incredible things right now.
Well, and I think you have to keep this in mind too. If you look at Casey White's, results so far this year, 43rd at Vegas, 54th at Waco. I mean, maybe not an awful start, but certainly not a good start to the year. But since then, 6th, 8th, 15th, 10th. And has competed and has been in a position to maybe try to win a tournament. Hasn't happened, but once they got out into the woods, the East Coast skills showed up, the putting skills showed up, and he has been, I think, if you look, it's sort of like, what have you done for me lately? He's been the best of the bunch. With Gavin Rathbun kind of feeling like he's close behind that in my mind. So I think the pick is reasonable. I agree with you about Mason Ford. You got to get a top 10. Like, winning a tournament is a huge boost. Finishing second at a tournament is a huge boost. Like, even as bad as Ezra's played, I don't know, the fact that he was second place at the first event of the year and was, clearly extremely competitive when the course was wide open, that counts for something. I think if I have to pick, I think I'm going to go with Kyle Klein. And it's really just that, it's easy to not talk about Kyle Klein because he's not really doing anything really standout exceptional, but he's got a top 10 finish. He's putting 85% from C1, which is great. He's in the top 50 in Circle 1 in regulation. He's 1029 rated. He's shown from last year that he's extremely good. I don't know if you necessarily say his season so far clearly stands above any of the other guys on this list, but I think the fact that, the rating is where it is and he's, very solid basically in every one of these categories, that level of kind of high level consistency, I think is a good sign.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't think any of them stand above. I think it is noteworthy with Ezra, though, just how powerful a top 3 finish is, because since Vegas, Ezra's best finish is 27th at Waco. He is not placed above that 27.
Yeah, I just think it's just not comfortable in like tight technical courses.
Mm-mm.
And I think, you see that in his fairway hits number is the worst of the bunch at 66%, 121st on tour.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that tells you a lot. And like the putting is not great either. Like he's 77% from circle one. Below 80% is just not good enough really for professional level disc golf. So
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it's just you can see the potential. He clearly has distance, power. He's got an unconventional putt for sure. And I think, if he can learn to try to hit those lines a little bit more clean in the woods, then, he could be the guy with the highest ceiling of this group. That's possible.
I buy that. For you, how much of it do you think is skill, needing more time on tour? Because remember, Ezra picked this game up and started playing competitively. Not only is him and Kyle Klein turned pro the latest in 2019, but I think Kyle Klein was he won amateur national championships or something something. I know Kyle Klein had a pretty excellent career when he was before on the tour. Ezra's career started with the tour, really. He just kind of jumped in out of nowhere. Do you think it's more than skills? He needs time to practice, or do you think it's more mental? Because I watched at the Open at Belton, he had one hole where he like 4-putted or something. Just could not put the putter in the basket. So which one do you think it is? Do you think it's more mental, or do you think he needs more time in order to develop and to get to that point?
I think it's a little of both. I'm curious. I'm going to pull it up. I want to know what he did last year in terms of stats, because I think that could give us some insight. By the way, yes, Kyle Klein won U.S. Amateurs in 2019.
Okay, that's what I was thinking of.
And, clearly, was a 5-star recruit, quote unquote.
Right.
So 2020 for Ezra Aderhold, let's take a look at the stats. 81% from Circle 1X, 34th on tour, 30th in Circle 2 putting. So he's playing a little worse on the putting green compared to, for him, his historical average, which is one season worth.
Right.
I think the grind of being on tour is a real thing. Remember last year he did start, he played Vegas, Memorial, and Waco, and then everybody was off for 3 months basically.
Yeah.
And then, he played a more full schedule after that, but there were also not as many tournaments last year because of all of the sort of, the national tour events got canceled. There weren't as many, there's only the one major. Getting used to the week in, week out grind is a real thing that takes time to learn how to deal with. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think part of it is, playing on brand new courses you haven't seen before. Part of it is getting used to life on the road. And he's had a lot of changes too. He's got the RV now, which I'm sure is a more luxurious experience than living out of the Prius. But at the same time, it's an adjustment. Mm-hmm. And that can be a lot to deal with, And,
we also have to,
in a way, new discs.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add.
I stole your thunder. My bad.
No, you're fine. I thought you were done. And that's exactly it. We're we just talked about James Conrad at Vintage, and we said, wow, James is, settling into his new bag. And Ezra, we're asking, and granted, he did take that second place, but Ezra's got that same adjustment he's got to make. So I have a question for you for these 6 guys.
Okay.
Imagine you are young and up and coming player on tour. Of these stats, which stat would you want to be the best at? Right? What's going to come later, and what do you know? Because I think that tells us a lot about potential as well. If your answer is a Circle 1 putting, then that tells us a lot, because Casey White is our best putter. So moving forward, if you want to come into the tour as a new player with one thing really locked down, which one are you picking?
To me, it's tee to green. So
tee to green.
I think if you want to say strokes gained, we could say that as a kind of a more comprehensive stat. But if I'm picking one of these counting categories, I would say Circle 1 and regulation.
Okay.
Because if you're finding Circle 1 and regulation a lot, that means you're going to be getting a lot of birdies, even if you're not that good of a putter. And a lot of these guys are clustered pretty closely together. There's only 5% of spread between them. You've got Raven Newsom at the bottom at 38% and Mason Ford at the top at 44%. So that's 6 points. My bad. So, I think if you can improve that number, then you're going to put yourself in a position to be more successful. And if we look, I'm going to pull up the stats on the season so far. The top Circle 1 in regulation guy on tour right now, that's regularly on tour, Clint Calvin at 56%. How many tournaments has Clint Calvin played? I'm pulling it up.
That's a good question.
Just one. So let's throw out Clint Calvin.
Good job,
Las
Clint
Vegas
Calvin.
Challenge.
Congratulations, Clint.
The next up is Paul McBeth at 54%. So there's your elite number. Probably over 50% would be considered elite.
Okay.
These guys that we're talking about, the best of them is 44%. If you can move that number up, that's going to translate very clearly into higher finishes.
And it's noteworthy that his Circle 1 in regulation percent, Mason Ford's, is the best right now, as you said. He also has the best birdie percentage at 44%. Right. So, and he's 18th on tour in birdies. So, I think that's fair. I think if I had to pick a stat, I think my stat would probably be scramble. Because I think scramble shows two things. I think first, it shows off real talent, real skills to get out of hard situations in technical courses, and your ability then to get out of them and have a variety of shots in your bag. But I think it also shows mental fortitude. If you're not giving up on a hole, if you're not blowing up and just throwing the disc out and then bouncing, army golf, left, right, I think then that shows a strong mental game. That is something that it's hard to teach. It's hard, they all will learn that mental game, I'm sure, but I think that's a good indicator of both of them. And when we think of, our top scrambler, the first person that always comes to that conversation is Ricky. So, sure. You've got Paul with Circle 1 in regulation, Ricky over on scramble. So I think those are both interesting questions about who's the best. And over here we have on our stats, Raven Newsom, who is the best scrambler in the group, has also the top average finish. So
there you go. Number one scrambler on tour right now that's on full tour is Nico LaCastro.
Okay.
79%.
Also having a phenomenal year. I never thought that I would I was going to give credit to Nico for having the strongest mental game of the group. But I guess by my logic, and I think there is some truth to that. He can lock it down when he needs to. So
that's true. All right. Well, that is going to do it for today's show. Please join us for our subscriber bonus segment when we talk about the future of spectating in disc golf. There's some big changes happening right now, and I think it's going to have major repercussions for the sport moving forward. So you can become a subscriber for less than $4 a month at discgolf.ultralight.com/subscribe. Thanks so much for tuning in. For Josh, I'm Charlie, saying so long, and we'll talk to you next week right here on The Upshot.